Hello dear students, this is Dr. Shabana Begum, Associate Professor in Zoology, Maharanis Science College for Women, Bangalore. Students, I am going to engage the first unit of first BSc first semester syllabus comprising of animal architecture, including subtopics such as the body symmetry, body organization, germ layers, in which I will discuss about the diploblastic and triploblastic condition of the body, then body coelom, body metamerism, and few topics which come under the phylum Protozoa of the syllabus. To begin with, let me give you a precise introduction about metazoans. So, metazoans may be defined as motile, multicellular, heterotrophic organisms that develop from embryos. However, metazoans like sponges and some cnidarians, that is the coelentrates, have become sessile, but still they have motile larvae in their life cycle. The differentiation of cells is a distinctive feature of metazoans. Their body cells are generally differentiated into tissues and organs, exception being the poriferans, which have a cellular grade of organization, and the cnidarians have a tissue grade of organization. The metazoans are diploid organisms in which the haploid gametes are formed by meiotic process. The gametes are produced within multicellular reproductive organs. There is a great diversity in metazoans, and according to the most widely accepted groupings, there are 29 phyla, of which only one, that is the Chordata, contains animals which are not invertebrates. The important features on the basis of which the metazoan hierarchy is decided are the body symmetry, the coelom, then cephalization, and metamerism. So this particular slide will give you an insight about the types of symmetry, that is the body symmetry, which is the first topic I am going to speak about. So the two diagrammatic representations, that is schematic diagrams, are the first one for the radially symmetrical condition, and the second diagram will give you the picture of a bilaterally symmetrical condition. So about body symmetry, let us learn about the objectives is to differentiate among the ways in which animals can be characterized by the body symmetry. What exactly is the word meaning of symmetry? So symmetry means the quality of being made up of exactly similar parts facing each other or around an axis. The simplest type of symmetry is the reflection or the mirror, right? So symmetry refers to a correspondence of body parts in size, shape, and relative position on opposite sides of a dividing line or distributed around a central point or axis. With the exception of radial symmetry, external form has little relation to internal anatomy, since animals of very different anatomical construction may have the same type of symmetrical conditions also. So next, when did symmetry evolve? So here is given that the radial symmetry lasted from approximately 635 to 541 plus or minus 1 million years ago. The organisms which lived in the Vendian Sea, that is the primitive Cambrian Sea, were mostly radially symmetrical creatures. And also the fossil evidence showed that bilateral symmetry had taken hold in animals as early as 500 million years. Theoretically, there are 5 main types of symmetrical conditions. As follows, you can mention the asymmetrical symmetry, second is the spherical symmetry, third one being the radial symmetry, fourth is the biradial symmetry, and last, the fifth one is the bilateral symmetry. Now, let us learn one by one. First is the asymmetrical symmetry. In some animals, there are no body axis and no plane of symmetry. Hence, the animals are called asymmetrical. The amoeboid forms, for example, the amoeba and many sponges have irregular growth pattern of the body and cannot be divided into two equal halves. Such a condition is called as asymmetrical conditions, right? So you can always say when an animal cannot be divided into two equal halves or like parts in any plane, it is called asymmetrical. Fine. So they lack symmetry. Next is the spherical symmetry. So in spherical symmetry, the shape of the body is spherical, that is rounded, and lack any axis. The body can be divided into two identical halves in any plane that runs through an organism's center. It is seen in volvox and radiolarian protozoans. These animals are adapted for free floating and rolling movements. So you can say the spherical symmetry is adapted for free floating and rolling movements, and the organism is omnidirectional. It can move equally well in any direction, and since you can say in spheres the interior mass is large relative to the surface area and becomes too large for efficient functioning with increase in size and complexity, spherical symmetry is found in less evolved animals with poorly developed structure and without much evolutionary significance. So, in asymmetrical symmetry and spherical symmetry, the polarity does not exist. The third type of symmetry is the radial symmetry. In radial symmetry, actually, the animal body parts are arranged around a central axis. They can be cut in half along many planes that allow for nearly identical halves. The two halves may be described as the two sides with a mouth or oral side and the side without a mouth or the aboral side. The animals which exhibit radial symmetry are cylindrical in form and shape, and the similar parts of the body are arranged equally around the axis. The axis extends from the center of the mouth, that is the oral side, to the center of the aboral side, that is the posterior part. The radial symmetry is seen among the sessile, sedentary, slow-moving and floating animals such as the sponges, hydroids, anthozoans, the two polyps, then they are polypoids as we know, medusae and sea stars, that is the starfish. That too adults, because we know in case of echinoderms, adults are radially symmetrical while their larvae are bilaterally symmetrical in condition. What is the significance of radial symmetry? So we can say the radial symmetry equips the animals to experience the environment equally from all directions. Fine. So that is one of the significance of it. So you can always say radial symmetry is especially suitable for sessile animals such as sea anemone, floating animals such as jellyfish, and slow moving organisms such as the starfish. Due to similar antimeres, that is the halves, radiating in all directions, the animal will be able to receive stimulus and food from all the sides. Since the conditions are symmetrical in all directions, the loss of one section can be compensated for by the remaining sections of the organism. So you can always mention that the radial symmetrical condition helps the animals for collecting food and also for defense. Apart from these definition, you can always give some more definitions for special forms of radial symmetrical conditions such as the tetramerous symmetry, wherein example can be given of jellyfishes, and it possesses 4 radial canals and the body can be divided into 4 equal parts. Hence, animals exhibit tetramerous radial symmetrical condition. Here the picture depicts the same tetramerous symmetry in case of a jellyfish. Next is the pentamerous symmetry. It's also a special form of radial symmetry in which most of the echinoderms possess pentamerous radially symmetrical condition because the body can be divided into 5 roughly equal parts. The body parts are arranged around the axis of the mouth at orientations of 72 degrees apart. The larvae of echinoderms are bilaterally symmetrical but acquires radial symmetry in adult stage. The radial symmetry of echinoderms is regarded as a secondary acquisition. Next, a special form of radial symmetry is the hexamerous symmetry. The example you can always cite is the sea anemones. So even in the diagram it is shown to be the hexamerous symmetrical condition. So the sea anemones and true coral polyps belong to the subclass Hexacoralia under the class Anthozoa, which are all polypoid in nature. The mesenteries and tentacles are arranged in the multiple of 6. The mesenteries are usually paired and are arranged in the multiple of 6, which I just mentioned. The body of hexacorallian polyps exhibits hexameric plan and have 6-fold internal symmetry. Finally, the octomerous symmetry. Here, the body of octocorallian polyps, which belong to the subclass Octocorallia, shows octomeric radial symmetry and contains 8 hollow marginal tentacles and 8 mesenteries, and the body can be divided equally into 8 parts. Next type of symmetry is the biradial symmetry. Here, the body of animals which exhibits biradial symmetry represents a combination of both radial and bilateral symmetry. The organs are arranged radially and the body can be divided into 2 by a mid-longitudinal plane. So, you can always see when an animal can be divided into 2 equal halves or antimeres in 2 planes, one through the longitudinal axis and the other through the sagittal or transverse axis, it is called biradial symmetry. This biradial symmetry occurs in comb jellies. So, in biradial symmetry, in addition to the antero-posterior axis, there are also 2 other axes at right angles to it and to each other. The sagittal or median vertical longitudinal and transverse or cross axis. Such an animal therefore not only has 2 ends but also has 2 pairs of symmetrical sides. This significance being the biradial symmetry is especially suitable for floating animals such as comb jellies belonging to again the phylum Ctenophora. So, the comb jellies exhibit biradial symmetry. The next type of symmetry being the bilateral symmetry, which is very important because most of the organisms exhibit the bilaterally symmetrical conditions of the body. So in bilateral symmetry, the body parts are arranged in such a way that the animal is divisible into roughly mirror image halves through one plane, that is the mid sagittal plane, longitudinal plane only. So this plane passes through the axis of the body to separate the two halves, which are referred to as the right and left halves. The animals which exhibit bilateral symmetrical conditions are called bilateria. So bilaterally symmetrical animals include acoelomates, where there is no coelom, absence of coelom is found, then pseudocoelomates, where there is a false coelom condition formed, and eucoelomates, where there is a true coelom, that is the body cavity. So among invertebrates and both lower chordates and vertebrates. So here in the key point is mentioned, and the figure depicts the bilateral symmetrical condition. The animals with bilateral symmetry have a distinct right and left half, and mostly they display cephalization, that is formation of head, having a head, you can say. So it is evolutionary advantageous to be bilaterally symmetrical. Its improved movements and lead to the development of the head and concentration of the sense organs there. The entire body of a bilateria can be divided into three planes, such as frontal, sagittal and transverse. So any of the vertical planes perpendicular to the sagittal plane that passes through the body separating the upper and underside is called frontal plane. The upper side is also called dorsal, which is usually away from the ground and near the back of the animal. The underside is also called ventral, which is usually facing towards the ground. A longitudinal plane that passes along the axis of the body of bilaterally symmetrical animal to separate right and left sides are called the mid-sagittal planes. What is the significance of bilateral symmetry? So, the bilateral symmetry is associated with the term cephalization, meaning the specialization of the anterior end of the body to form the head, where the nervous tissues, sense organs and feeding organs are concentrated. The other advantages of this symmetry are the streamlining of the body, development of different organs in different body regions, and more efficient unidirectional movement. Along with this, let us discuss about the evolution of symmetry. So in case of parazoans, that are the sponges, they lack any definite symmetry, hence they are asymmetrical. Eumetazoans have a symmetry defined along imaginary axis drawn through the animal's body. Bilateral animals have one of the three basic body plans, acoelomate, pseudocoelomate and coelomate conditions. Then bilateral symmetrical animals have two main advantages over radially symmetrical animals, like cephalization, that is the evolution of a definite brain area, and the greater mobility. Lastly, what is the outcome of the study? That is the small topic on the body symmetry. So in a nutshell, you can say the symmetry affects an organism's lifestyle, such as the radial symmetry enables sea creatures which may be sedentary or only capable of slow movement or floating to experience the environment equally from all directions. Bilateral symmetry allows for streamlined and directional motion. In evolutionary terms, this simple form of symmetry promoted active mobility and increased sophistication of resource seeking and predator-prey relationships. Based on the type of symmetry of their body plan, true animals are largely divided into three groups. Example, the radially symmetrical, bilaterally symmetrical and asymmetrical. All types of symmetries are well suited to meet the unique demands of a particular animal's lifestyle. Lastly, only a few animal groups display radial symmetry, while asymmetry is a unique feature of the phylum Porifera, that is, the sponges. So, after studying about the different types of symmetry, body symmetries, let us discuss some of the multiple choice questions to know whether you have really understood the topic or not. So the first MCQs is the jellyfishes has a body that radiates outward from a central point. It has a mouth to take in food. Which type of body symmetry does the jellyfish display? The four options being asymmetry, bilateral symmetry, radial symmetry, or spherical symmetry. The answer being jellyfishes, their body is radially symmetry. The option C is the correct answer. The second MCQs, that is a multiple choice question, being which type of symmetry can be found in complex animals that have well-formed heads? Spherical symmetry, B. Radial symmetry, C. Asymmetrical condition, D is bilateral symmetry. The answer being the option D, bilateral symmetry. Third question. An animal with bilateral symmetry can be divided into two identical halves across an imaginary dividing line. Which animal displays this type of symmetry? So options: A is sea star, B a fish, C jellyfish, D sea sponge. The answer being a fish. B is the option. Then next question. Radial symmetry is found in A. Coelenterata and Platyhelminthes. Option B. Coelenterata and Echinodermata. Option C. Arthropoda and Mollusca. Option D being Porifera and Coelenterata. The answer being option B, that is Coelenterata and Echinodermata exhibit radial symmetry. The next question. The radial symmetry is found in the animals of A. Protozoa, B. Porifera, C. Cnidaria, and D. all of the above. The answer being the cnidarians, they are the coelentrates. So C is the option which is the correct answer. So these are the references for you to go through if you have any doubts. So with this, I'm going to end my talk and discussion about the first topic,